Hello, John Talley here with Partzilla.com. Today we're working with our 2011 Polaris Sportsman 850. Listen, we did a compression test on this one about a week or so ago, and I noticed that the readings were off. And the reason being, it should have been around 100 psi on each cylinder. Well, it was on the front, but the rear one only had about 80, so I'm amazed that this thing is running. So here's what we're going to do. I'm betting it's probably going to be the piston and rings. That's my hunch on this one. But to do that, we need to pull the engine all the way out of the machine, get it over on the teardown bench, and get it taken apart. So it starts off by just removing the plastics, draining the oil, radiator fluid, several other connections as far as the prop shaft that goes to your transmission, front differential, things like that. It's going to be fairly complicated. So let's go ahead and start pulling some plastics, and we'll get into it. Alright guys, let's go over some of the tools that we're going to need to get this procedure done. There are no specialty tools, so everything that you're going to need, you could go pick up your local Sears or Lowe's. I just want to give you an overview. You're going to need a decent hammer, a couple of different pry bars, a full set of Allens. This particular set goes from a 2 up to a 10 millimeter. If you don't already have a set of Torx, definitely going to need to get these, at least from a T10 up to about a T40. Next, you're going to need a couple of different punch tools, 3/8 extensions. Also, makes life a lot easier if one of your extension actually has kind of what they call a swivel on the end of it, like this one does. All right, as far as the sockets, at least need to get a run from 8 millimeter up to about 15 millimeters. And some of the work gets really tight, so I prefer to use a 1/4 inch drive in that case with a 8 millimeter and at least a 10 millimeter socket. Beyond that, just need a decent 3/8 ratchet. As far as your box end wrenches, just need a 10 and a 13 millimeter. Your pliers, just nothing special. Right here I've got what they call a hook nose pair of needle nose pliers. This particular tool right here is a plier specifically for moving those plastic rivets, so you may want to invest in one of these, make your life a lot simpler. A set of needle nose vice grip pliers, a couple of different pick tools, and then a couple of just regular old flat blades, a long one and a short one. Other than that, you want to pick up a service manual for one of these machines. Alright guys, we got most of the plastics off that are going to be necessary. Next I want to go ahead and drain the oil out of it. I mean, we're basically going to do a top end rebuild. I want to start off with fresh oil. So it's just a 6 millimeter Allen, about dead center of the machine. And when you drain it out, make sure you've already got the dipstick, at least loosened. That'll allow it to drain easier. Plus, when you drop this drain plug out, make sure you don't lose the crush washer on it. That one stayed on there. Alright guys, so we've got the oil out of the machine, and now it's going to be very important that we go ahead and disconnect the battery. What I'm going to do is just pull these upper covers, the storage container, and then that cover right there, get to the negative side of the battery, get it pulled, and then we'll continue on. Once you release those two anchors, it'll just pull up and then pivot on that hinge. Alright, no need to pull that other cover. The negative's right here. We're just going to get it disconnected for a couple of reasons. One, we're going to be disconnecting the starter, and we don't want that grounding out anywhere. And plus, if you were to walk away right now with it still connected and somebody decided to start it with no oil in it, that wouldn't work out very well either. So let's go ahead and get that negative disconnected. Alright, now with our battery disconnected, I want to go ahead and remove the linkage. Basically that arm's just pressed into this plastic pivot. Next we want to go ahead and remove the shielding for the exhaust, and then the rear springs at the muffler. They can be a little tricky to get off. Next we want to remove the 4 exhaust manifold bolts. Once you get those removed, then the exhaust just lifts out. Now we're going to be removing this frame strut as well as the intake, airbox, intake plenum. Starts with just removing these 4 bolts for the frame strut, 2 in the front and 2 in the back. I want to go ahead and remove the ECM plug it's important that you want to shift the collar forward as you're pulling it down to get it to release. Next, you just have a couple of bolts that are going to be holding in the airbox itself. With that one screw from that airbox removed, you can remove the strut. Next, you want to remove the trigger for the coil pack. Now you can remove that other bolt for the intake. Now a couple of more bolts on the airbox. Go down below and loosen up the clamp for the intake plenum. At this point, really need to go ahead and get the rest of the plastics off the front of the machine so we've got full access. Now I'm just putting in a rag to keep any debris from going in the intake over there. Now we can lift off the airbox and pull out the connection that's going down to the intake plenum. Go ahead and get the rear intake for the transmission out of the way. Next, we want to go ahead and make sure there's no pressure in the fuel system. There's just a Schrader valve on the fuel rail. Just want to go ahead and push it in and make sure no fuel pressure is present. Next, you want to remove the fuel line going to the fuel rail. A little tricky, a little plastic collar right there. You have to pry it up by pushing on the pin or the edges of it on the bottom, and then it'll release. Next, you're going to want to remove the two upper bolts that hold the fuel tank in place. I'm going to go ahead and remove the fuel line so it doesn't get caught on anything. Then the fuel tank breather line. After that, it's just a matter of wiggling the gas tank out. Next, we want to go ahead and remove the lines going to the radiator. Go ahead and drain all the fluid out of it. Remove the upper and lower hoses. Next, we need to actually lift the machine all the way up so we can rotate the tires to get the prop shaft in the appropriate angle going to the front differential, because there's a pin that I have to knock through to get it removed. Alright, with it rotated the right direction, this little pin right there, I'm just going to use a flat punch to knock it all the way through, but not all the way out. We just want it to clear the splined input shaft. Alright, with the pin pushed far enough to clear the input shaft of the front differential, you can knock the entire shaft backwards toward the back of the machine. At this point, once it clears the front differential, you can push it forward again to release it from the transmission. Next, we want to go ahead and remove all the bolts that are actually connecting the engine to the transmission. I believe there's 9 of them, so make sure you get them all. Alright, next we want to go ahead and address the fuel system. Starts off by just removing the intake plenum, which in turn is also going to release the throttle bodies. I'm going to leave the throttle cable connected to them. What we're going to do is just zip tie it up and out of the way. Next, we can address the fuel rail, get all the connections off of it and the fuel injectors themselves. A couple more bolts and she swings out as one assembly. I'm going to go ahead and put a couple of rags in the intake so we don't get any debris inside. One of the last things we need to do is go ahead and remove the motor mounts. Don't just remove the bolts that go through the frame. We want to remove the entire mount with the brackets that go to the case of the engine. With all the bolts removed, use a pry bar, go ahead and lift up on the engine, and the mount and the brackets will all come out. Now we can go ahead and gently pry the engine away from the transmission. Once it gets loosened up, just stand over it, shake it till she separates. Alright guys, well she is free of the frame. All we have to do now is, I got to get some help from somebody to lift this thing up and get it on the teardown bench. This completes step 1, which is basically just the removal of the engine. What we're going to do next in the next video is go ahead and pull this thing down and find out what's going on inside. Why is it burning oil? Why is the compression off? So if you want to find out what happens next, come see us in the next video, and until then, just want to say thank you for watching.